Hello, Adam again. This is part of my ongoing video series, Finding My Next Tabletop Role-Playing Game. I'm recording this about a half an hour before MCDM starts crowdfunding their new tabletop role-playing game, name to be determined, so lots of stuff about that probably tomorrow if I have time to ingest it all. But today I thought I would talk about something called Cool Name Goes Here. So another one that doesn't have a name yet, really, but that's their placeholder. Cool Name Goes Here. It's how they kickstarted their game that they're making. But first I wanted to talk about the criteria I have for the game I want to be my next favorite one. It should have 7 things. It can sustain longer campaigns over months. It has the complexity somewhat less of D&D 5e. It's got a fantasy setting, but not one so niche that it's like one particular thing, like Stranger Things or whatever. It's got a streamlined combat system. I don't really like initiative rolls or modifiers being separate from ability scores or attack and damage rolls being separate. It does away with bioessentialism. There are non-combat rules of consequence and an open license for third-party publishers. So those are my 7 things. So Cool Name Goes Here, or as they call it today, Cool Name RPG, real name to be determined, was started in February of 2023 by Mark Tassin, or Tassin, sorry if I mispronounced that. And it really was marketed as a community-owned fantasy system. What that means is that they would make it, right? They would produce it. Mark would hire all these designers, and then they would make the game. And then once it published, they would turn it over to the community, basically as sort of the antithesis of what they were trying to do with the open game license, so that anyone could design for it, and so that all the rules were out there in public. And I really admired what they are trying to do. I mean, that's pretty incredible. What a gift to the community to have a good game out there that anyone can design for, and all the rules are online and available for free. I'm not sure everyone was on board. They made $30,000 on their Kickstarter. I don't know how much they made in late pledges and in their backer kit. But 577 people went, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do that. Now they're in their playtesting phase. I got a copy of their playtest that was released on September 22nd, 2023. So this is a little bit dated, but not terribly so. And action resolution is, well, it reminds me a little bit of kind of a hybrid of Dungeon World, which is powered by the Apocalypse, and D&D 5th edition, in that you have a difficulty class. I can't remember what they call it, but basically you add up all these things. So the GM thinks through the scenario. This person is trying to fix a wagon cart in the rain. So rain involves wind. That's 1 point against you. Rain, obviously, precipitation falling down. It's dark, maybe. So those are 3 things in addition to sort of maybe 1 or 2, because fixing a cart isn't really hard for someone who knows what they're doing. So you have this score of 5. And then you roll and add anything that's about your character that might help you in that sort of situation. Maybe you are a caravaneer, so you can add a few points to whatever you roll. And then you compare the 2 numbers, and depending on which is higher, that determines whether or not you succeed. In addition to that, there are 9 attributes. Yes, I didn't misspeak, 9. So more than I've ever seen. This is like their ability score. So it's strength, coordination, toughness, creativity, intellect, willpower, awareness, empathy, and presence. And they're grouped into 3 different categories: physical, mental, and instinctive. One thing I really like is that in combat, players don't roll. Well, the monsters and villains don't roll, so the GM is not rolling. The players roll to defend themselves. And I've always really liked that, because I think that the players don't get to do enough, right? When they're waiting around for their turn or whatever. In most games, like, they have to wait. There's a turn order. But how exciting it is for them to be able to roll dice. I think that's a main player draw, and something as a GM I'm not really looking to do. I don't need to roll more dice. Another thing I thought was really cool was that when you are reduced to 0 hit points, I don't know if they call them hit points, but instead of falling unconscious, you become incapacitated, which means you're groggy, you can't really do much in terms of movement except crawl, you can only speak falteringly. It's like you're suffering a concussion or a grievous wound, something like that, right? Um, and one of the actions you can do when you're incapacitated is to recover, which means you get to restore some of your vitality. I think that's really cool because what a letdown when you're unconscious and you're just making death saving throws or whatever, right? There's really nothing you can do when you're unconscious. But there's a chance, right? There's a chance in this game of doing something. Now there is a separate thing, like if you're more grievously wounded, you don't fall incapacitated. You actually take a wound, which can really harm you and even cause death. So it's not like this is like it's impossible to die. It's just for most hits, you're going to become incapacitated instead. One thing I didn't like is that you still roll for initiative. It's a coordination check, so using that coordination attribute. And it's helped a little bit because you can give up an action to re-roll your initiative, but I can't see many players ever doing that. Why would you give up your entire turn this time just for the chance, not even the guarantee, but the chance to be able to have a better initiative next time? It just doesn't. I don't think anyone would ever do that. And I don't really like rolling for initiative, so this is kind of a letdown for me. But I think the main thing that bothers me about this system, and it's why it probably will not be my favorite TTRPG going forward, is not that that can't change, right? This is still very much in development. They say on every playtest document, we're still working on things, but there's something very, very core to this system so far that I don't see really going away. And that's this. When you perform an action, remember how I said that you had to add up everything that might help you? So these are your action scores. Let's say I'm really good at something, so I might have a 7 after I add up all my modifiers. Well, you look on this graph and you go, okay, I roll d6 plus d8 to perform my action and compare that with the difficulty of the thing I'm confronting, whether that's trying to hit a villain or monster, or, as I used in the previous example, fix a wagon. But I found this really finicky. I don't really want to look at a chart every single time I need to roll dice. Does that make sense? And it would be really every single time because your action score could be different depending on what you're rolling for. You might be untrained in something, and so you have a lower action score, or a high expert in. And just going back and referencing this chart and having these fairly ambiguous dice attached to them kind of feels like, I don't know, it feels like an extra step that doesn't really need to be there. And maybe maybe if I sat down and playtested this, it would be just fine. But where I'm standing right now, I don't really want to do that. So this game is probably not for me. Again, it's in development, and I'm not going to make a final verdict on any of it until I see the entire product. But so far, I think there are more exciting, more interesting games that don't use charts, that don't roll initiative, that would be better suited for me, and might have a bigger fan base as well, which is a draw. So, since I'm a designer and I'm trying to find a system that I can design for, and then the products that I make will actually be bought with some, numbers. So yeah, cool name goes here. It's a cool idea. I really like what they're trying to do. I wish them the best of luck. But I don't think what they've made so far is for me. And that's not to slight it at all. It's just my own particular leanings. And it might really, really appeal to some people. So I'm still looking for my next tabletop role-playing game.